So yet again, we're going to be taking a look at another anime based after a game, and that happens to be Fate/Stay Night, or just Fate Stay Night, whatever you want to call it. I remember when I first watched this show a couple years ago, I didn't even know it was based after a game. And of course I never played it because the game was only released in Japan. So in case you're wondering what systems is it for, is that you can get it on the computer, you can get it on PS2, and you can even get it on the PlayStation Vita. But here's the thing though, it's a visual novel, and because it's only released in Japan, that means you have no way of actually really enjoying the game unless you can actually read Japanese. Unless there is a fan translation out there, which I'm willing to bet there probably is one on the PC version. So the point is, I can't make any comparisons if it's trying to be close to it, but I assume it is pretty much almost exactly like it. But I am willing to bet that the anime does cut down on a few things. So because I don't know the whole origin of it, I really can't say much, so we kinda have to take this show for what it is. So anyways, now let's talk about the story. So it begins with a character named Shiro, and he's a high school student who is very honest and always cares about other people and always willing to help them out. So he ends up living at a huge ass house because 5 years ago, his father died. So everything got left to him. But he does have other people coming over to help him out, such as Sakura, who was very good friends with Shiro for many years. And then you got Taiga, who is one of his teachers who always helps him out at home. So one day after school when he was trying to clean up the gym, he heard a noise outside and that happened to be two people fighting, but they don't look like regular people at all. So after witnessing it, he runs, but then he realizes that one of them actually catches him. And then what happens here is that he dies, and yep, game over, that's it, end of review. Okay, I'm just kidding, but anyways, what actually happens is that he gets resurrected by someone named Rin, who is in his class. So after when he gets resurrected, he's very confused with the whole thing. So he ends up going home, but until when he realizes when he goes home, he is actually being followed by the same guy that stabbed him. So he's always trying his best to defend himself from him, but it's not really working out that well. Until suddenly out of nowhere, a seal happens from the ground and he happens to get enough power to summon someone named Saber. So Saber ends up protecting him, and then Lancer, the guy who stabbed him, ends up going away. So he ends up seeing Rin again right outside his house, and she's almost about to get stabbed by Saber. So Shiro ends up yelling at her and telling her to stop, so she doesn't actually stab her. So she tries to explain a couple of things to him, but he doesn't realize anything of what's going on. So from the beginning, Shiro actually has a magical power where he gets to reinforce certain objects, but he can't do anything else at all, even for a master. So here's how the thing works. So you got a master, and then you got a servant. So the master ends up getting some type of tattoo on their arm, but they call it commands. And these commands are very helpful because they allow you to take complete control over your servant. But you can only use 3 of them, and once they're all up, well, you can't really do much after that. So the servant's role is more like a guardian than anything. And all the guardians have names that are based after classes. Just for an example, like Saber uses a big sword. And then as for Archer, who is the servant for Rin, he's supposed to use a bow and arrow, but for the most part you usually see him using 2 swords. And there is at least 7 of these people. But these 2 are the most important, since they are the main characters after all. So eventually Rin ends up taking Shiro to go see someone named Kyrie. And Kyrie's role is the current overseer of the tournament going on called the Holy Grail Wars, which takes place every other decade. And the point of this tournament is to get 7 of these masters and servants together, and they have to fight to the death, and whoever wins gets the Holy Grail, and they get to make a wish. But it's also important to know that even the servant can make a wish as well. So in other words, the story of this one is almost like a mix between the Hunger Games and Pokemon, if there really is a difference between those two anyways. Well, there's begun the whole collecting monsters, and then there's begun the whole collecting badges, and then there's begun the whole Team Rocket. So before I end talking about the story, one last thing I should say is that Shiro and Rin are actually rivals and are supposed to be enemies to each other, but they end up helping each other out mostly because they have a truce, so they can take out some bigger targets first. And one of them happens to be someone named Eliasvale von Eisenberg. Oh, that's a mouthful. So she is an innocent looking girl, but happens to have a servant who is like the size of Godzilla named Berserker. So that's an example of one of the 7 who is very powerful. So I think that covers what you need to know, or at least what the basics are, because yes, there is a lot more to this one. But I'll leave it to you guys to watch this one, because honestly, I actually really enjoyed this one. So with that being said, I actually really like the story for this one. I mean, I really like the idea of it, and the characters actually make it really good. And of course, it does have its funny moments, but it's never anything over the top, or, you know, comes off as campy. And it has a really good fair amount of action, and I really do like the lore of it. And the backstories are pretty great too, so with that being said, I actually really like the story in this one. So let's move on to other things, like the animation. And all I have to say is that the animation actually looks really good. There's not a lot that I can really complain about, but I just think everything just looks really nice. Like when it comes to the backgrounds, the settings, the overall effects, so I really don't have much to say about it, but of course another thing I should say is that the character designs are awesome. So overall, nothing much I can really complain about. Now as for the music, well, considering I never played the game, I can't really say if they're trying to adapt music from the game, but I have listened to a couple of songs off the OST just because I was curious. And I can't really remember any of these songs actually being in the show, but all I have to say is that both of them sound awesome anyway. But because I'm taking a look at the anime, I'm not going to say anything about the game's music, but I'll just leave it as I really like it. But as for the music in the show, well, I also do really like it, and I do find it actually does have a really good atmosphere to it at times. So of course, it suits the show very well. So as again, I really don't have much to say other than that, I really like it. Now as for the opening theme song, well as again, I really like this one a lot too. I find it to be really catchy, and it even gets stuck in my head every now and then. And of course, it does suit the show as well. So all I have left to say about that is that I also really enjoy it a lot. But now as for the voice acting, it's actually pretty damn great. So you got Sam Riegel playing Shiro, and all I have to say is that he actually suits the role really well. So that's a really good one. So then Kate Higgins ends up playing Saber, and she also does a really good job as her, so can't complain there. And then you have Mela Lee playing Rin, and all I have to say is that she does a good job for the most part, but I do feel she can be a little bit inconsistent at times because there are certain parts where she does sound a little bit off, but it's nothing I'd really make a big stink about. But it is worth mentioning that it's not perfect, but it still is a pretty good voice for her. And as for the last one in the main cast, well, that happens to be Archer, who is being played by Liam O'Brien, and well, what can I say about that? That's awesome. But as for the other cast members, you do get some pretty good stuff like Jameson Pierce, Grant George, who I always feel is underrated most of the time, Cheryl Lynn, Stephanie Say, Julianne Taylor, Tony Oliver, Tara Platt, Patrick Sates, David Vincent, and then finally I'll mention is Karen Strassman, Lex Lang, and Kirk Thornton, so with that being said, that's definitely pretty damn awesome. Now there are a couple other ones I didn't mention, but they're still good. So with that being said, it's definitely a great cast, and what's funny is that this was actually my first time watching it with the dub, because how I originally watched this show, I watched it with the sub. Okay, that phrase right there almost sounded like I was trying to make a rap song. Well, anyways, I don't mind watching animes in sub at all, it's just the thing is that... So the reason why I always mention the dub in my reviews is mostly because at least it gives me something more to talk about, because I'm pretty sure you guys would get sick and tired of me saying the same old shit every time. You know the saying, like, whenever something is only in Japanese and therefore I can't judge the quality. And the other reason why is because I can actually watch a show and do something at the same time and still understand what's going on. But of course there are shows out there that I actually do prefer watching them in subs, such as Another, most of the Gundam series, Rurouni Kenshin, and even Cardcaptors because, well, the dub for that one fucking sucks. I just figured I'd mention that here because I have a feeling that someone probably thinks I hate sub anime, but no, I don't. I actually do like some of it. But I do remember when I watched the sub for this one, well, I couldn't really complain about anything really. So with that being said, yeah, definitely the voice acting, no matter which one you go, is good. So now, as for the overall score, if I were to rate this one, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Now I have thought about being generous with this one and giving it a 10, but I ain't feeling it. Then again, a 9 or a 10 doesn't make a shit difference for me. So with that being said, I actually really enjoyed this one. Yes, even without knowing anything about the game, I still found it to be a very enjoyable anime. Mostly because, like I already said, the idea, the characters, the backstory, the setting, all that good shit, even though it is very similar to Hunger Games, but you know what, that's fine, whatever. I know there's another anime out there that is very similar to it, but it's called Sekirei. And yes, I have seen that one before, and I will probably do a review on it, but I don't know when. But as for Fate/Stay Night, yeah, it's definitely a big favorite of mine. Now, they did make a bunch of games after it as well, but I don't know all of them, but I do know one thing, is that they actually did make a game that did get released over here, but it was on the PSP, and I can't remember the name of it, but I believe it was an RPG, so that sounds pretty interesting. And then there's other series that fall into Fate/, such as Zero. And as you might guess from the title, it's actually a prequel, and I have seen a little bit of it, but I don't really remember it too well. And then there was one that came out fairly recently, and that happened to be called Fate/Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. Now, because it is recent, I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan on watching it eventually because I'm very curious about it. So all I have left to say is that, if you find this show at least interesting, then I highly recommend you go watch it.